What would you do if you were just a maid, an invisible, overweight woman in a house run by the city's most dangerous syndicate boss, and you saw his new fiancée torturing his little girl? When Beatrice made that forbidden phone call, her hands shaking as she whispered, "Please come home now. She'll destroy her." She knew it could mean her death. But nothing could have prepared her for the moment. The front doors blew open, and he walked in. To survive in the Rossi estate, you had to be a ghost. For Beatrice Miller, being invisible was both a survival tactic and a physical impossibility. At 260 pounds, Beatrice was a woman who took up space in a world that demanded she shrink. Her standard black maid's uniform was tight across her broad shoulders, and the white apron strings bit into the soft, thick flesh of her waist. Her thighs chafed as she hurried down the endless, marble-floored corridors of the Chicago mansion, her breathing heavy. She was 28, soft-spoken, and painfully aware of every flaw, every drop of sweat that beaded on her forehead when she carried laundry up the grand staircase. But Beatrice had one advantage. People like Victoria Kensington didn't see her as a human being. They saw her as furniture. Victoria was Leo Rossi's new fiancée. She was a socialite with a waist the size of a diamond choker, platinum hair, and eyes as cold as the bottom of the Chicago River. She was moving into the estate, bringing her expensive silk baggage and her quiet, venomous cruelty. And then there was Leo Rossi. Leo was not a man you looked in the eye. As the head of the Rossi syndicate, his business was blood, territory, and silence. He was a towering, broad-shouldered man with a sharp jawline covered in dark stubble, carrying an aura of such intense violence that the air seemed to leave the room when he entered. Yet beneath the terrifying exterior, there was one singular pulse of humanity left in him: his 6-year-old daughter, Lily. Lily was a frail, quiet child, deeply traumatized by the car bombing that had taken her mother's life 2 years prior. She rarely spoke, preferring to communicate through her crayon drawings, hiding behind the heavy velvet curtains of the estate. Beatrice loved that little girl fiercely. Because Beatrice was large and soft, Lily naturally gravitated to her, often burying her tiny face in Beatrice's plump side when the world became too loud. Beatrice would sneak Lily extra pieces of warm shortbread from the kitchen, sitting with her in the pantry, reading her stories while the violent business of the Mafia happened behind closed mahogany doors. But Victoria's arrival shifted the fragile ecosystem of the house. "Watch where you're going, you massive cow," Victoria hissed one afternoon, bumping into Beatrice in the hallway. Victoria brushed her pristine white blazer as if Beatrice's very presence had infected it. "I don't understand why Leo keeps someone of your proportions on the staff. It's aesthetically offensive." "I apologize, Miss Kensington," Beatrice murmured, bowing her head, her cheeks burning with hot, familiar shame. She pulled her arms tight around her stomach, trying to make herself smaller. Victoria sneered, but her attention quickly snapped to the doorway where little Lily stood, holding a stuffed rabbit. Victoria's eyes narrowed. The socialite hated the child. Lily was a reminder of Leo's past, a complication in Victoria's plan to control the Rossi empire and its wealth. "And you," Victoria snapped at the little girl, her voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. "Stop staring at me with those pathetic, buggy eyes. Your father isn't here to coddle you right now." Lily flinched, shrinking back into the shadows. Beatrice's heart twisted. She wanted to step in, to shield the girl with her own large frame, but she was paralyzed by fear. If she lost this job, she had nothing. If she crossed Victoria, she might end up in the trunk of a car. When Leo was home, Victoria played the part of the perfect doting stepmother-to-be. She would stroke Lily's hair, though Beatrice noticed how Victoria's manicured nails dug into the child's scalp, and smile radiantly at Leo. Leo, exhausted from running a criminal empire and desperate for a mother figure for his broken daughter, seemed blind to the act. He saw what he wanted to see: a functional family. "Take care of my girls, Beatrice," Leo had rumbled in his deep, gravelly voice just 2 days before the incident. He was standing in the foyer, adjusting his expensive Italian coat. He looked at Beatrice, his dark eyes piercing right through her. "I rely on you to keep an eye on Lily." "Always, Mr. Rossi," Beatrice had promised, her voice trembling slightly under his intense gaze. She meant it, but she had no idea how severely that promise was about to be tested. The nightmare began on a Tuesday. Leo was summoned to Miami for a sit-down with a rival cartel faction. He was supposed to be gone for 48 hours. His most trusted enforcer, Matteo, went with him, leaving the estate guarded by lower-level muscle who stayed strictly to the perimeter. Inside the house, Victoria was completely in charge. The moment Leo's black SUV disappeared down the gated driveway, the temperature in the house dropped. Victoria's first act was to dismiss the head housekeeper, the chef, and the other maids, claiming she wanted a quiet, private weekend. She kept only Beatrice. "Someone has to scrub the baseboards," Victoria had said, sipping a martini at 10 in the morning, eyeing Beatrice's heavy frame with disgust. "The manual labor will do you good. God knows you need the cardio." Beatrice swallowed her pride, donning her apron. But her real concern wasn't the grueling work. It was Lily. By noon, Victoria's true colors were on full display. Beatrice was on her hands and knees in the dining room, scrubbing the oak floors, sweat pouring down her face and soaking the collar of her uniform. Her knees ached terribly, carrying the weight of her heavy body against the hard wood. From the adjacent living room, Beatrice heard a sharp cracking sound, followed by a soft, terrified whimper. Beatrice struggled to her feet, her joints popping, and rushed to the doorway. Victoria was standing over little Lily. In Victoria's hands was Lily's sketchbook, the one thing the little girl used to express her grief. With a vicious tear, Victoria ripped the book in half, letting the colorful pages flutter to the floor like dead leaves. "I told you to clean up your mess," Victoria hissed, grabbing Lily by her thin arm and squeezing until the child's knuckles turned white. "You are a spoiled, disgusting little brat. When I marry your father, you are going straight to a boarding school in Switzerland. You will never see him again." "No!" Lily cried out, tears streaming down her pale cheeks. Beatrice felt a hot surge of adrenaline mask her usual timidity. She stepped into the room, her large frame blocking the doorway. "Miss Kensington," Beatrice said, her voice shaking but louder than usual. "Please, she's just a child. I'll clean up the crayons." Victoria whipped her head around, her eyes blazing with aristocratic fury. She dropped Lily's arm and marched up to Beatrice. Despite being 100 pounds lighter and half a foot shorter, Victoria's malice made her towering. "Did I speak to you, you fat pig?" Victoria snarled, stepping into Beatrice's personal space. She poked a sharp acrylic nail hard into Beatrice's soft chest. "You are the help. You are nothing. If you ever interrupt me again, I will tell Leo you were stealing from the safe. You know what they do to thieves in this family, Beatrice. They cut their hands off. Now get back to the floor where you belong." Beatrice's breath hitched. She looked down at Lily, who was sobbing silently on the rug. Beatrice had to be smart. If she was thrown out, Lily would be left entirely alone with this monster. "I'm sorry," Beatrice whispered, lowering her head, tears of humiliation pricking her eyes. "I'll go back to work." "Pathetic," Victoria scoffed, turning her back. "Lily, go to your room. No lunch for you. And if you make a sound, I'll lock you in the cellar." For the rest of the day, Beatrice worked herself to the bone, her mind racing. She waited until Victoria retired to the master suite with a bottle of wine before sneaking into the kitchen. She prepared a small plate of sliced apples, cheese, and a warm roll, hiding it under a napkin. Moving as quietly as a woman of her size could, Beatrice climbed the back stairs to Lily's room. She found the little girl curled in a tight ball in the corner of her closet, shivering. Beatrice wedged her large body into the closet, pulling the tiny girl into her lap. "Shh, sweet girl," Beatrice cooed, rocking her. Lily clung to Beatrice's thick neck, burying her face in the soft, warm curve of her shoulder. "I brought you some food. You have to eat." "She hates me, Bea," Lily whispered brokenly, taking a small bite of the bread. "She says Daddy hates me too, that he wishes I died with Mummy." Beatrice's blood ran cold. The psychological torture was escalating faster than she had anticipated. "That is a lie, Lily. Your daddy loves you more than his own life. He doesn't see what she is." "Are you going to leave me?" Lily asked, her large brown eyes pleading. "Never," Beatrice promised, kissing the top of her head. "I am right here." Suddenly, the bedroom door flew open, crashing against the wall. Victoria stood there, swaying slightly, a half-empty wine glass in her hand. Her face was twisted into a mask of pure, ugly rage. "I knew it," Victoria slurred, her eyes darting from the food to Beatrice. "I told you no dinner. Are you deaf, you oversized whale?" Beatrice tried to stand, instinctively putting herself between Victoria and the child. "She was hungry, Miss Kensington. It's just a little—" Smack! Victoria's hand struck Beatrice across the face. The heavy diamond ring on Victoria's finger caught Beatrice's cheek, slicing the skin open. Blood instantly welled up, dripping down Beatrice's face. The physical sting was sharp, but the shock was paralyzing. "You don't make the rules in my house!" Victoria screamed. She grabbed Lily by the hair, hauling the screaming child out of the closet. "Stop, please!" Beatrice begged, lunging forward, but her heavy body was clumsy. She tripped over the edge of the rug, falling hard to her knees. "You want to coddle her? Fine!" Victoria dragged the kicking, sobbing child out into the hallway. "Let's see how much she likes the dark." Beatrice scrambled to her feet, her heavy breath echoing in the silent house as she chased them down the hall. Victoria dragged Lily down the grand staircase, her heels clicking aggressively against the marble. Lily was crying hysterically now, coughing as she struggled to breathe. The child had severe asthma, brought on by extreme stress, a detail Victoria either didn't know or didn't care about. "Miss Kensington, please, she can't breathe!" Beatrice yelled, her thick thighs burning as she rushed down the stairs, her heart pounding frantically against her ribs. Victoria dragged the girl into the kitchen and yanked open the heavy, iron-reinforced door that led down to the subterranean wine cellar. The cellar was soundproof, pitch black, and freezing cold. "Stay in there and think about how you're going to behave when your father gets back." Victoria shoved the little girl down the first few steps. "Bea! Bea!" Lily screamed, coughing violently, her chest heaving. Beatrice threw her large body towards the door, trying to block it from closing, but Victoria was fueled by adrenaline and wine. She slammed the heavy iron door shut, catching Beatrice's fingers. Beatrice cried out in agony, pulling her bruised, bleeding hand back, just as the heavy deadbolt slid into place with a sickening clack. There, Victoria dusted off her hands, looking at Beatrice with a triumphant, sadistic smirk. She stays in there until morning. If you try to unlock it, or if you call the guards, I will tell Leo you attacked me. Look at you. Victoria pointed to Beatrice's bleeding cheek. You're unstable. Who do you think he'll believe? His beautiful future wife, or a fat, pathetic maid who can't even tie her own shoes without breaking a sweat? Victoria leaned in, her breath smelling of expensive vodka and malice. You're fired. Pack your cheap bags and get out of my house before I have the guards throw you out. Victoria turned and walked away, heading toward the living room to pour herself another drink. Beatrice fell against the iron door of the cellar. She pressed her ear to the cold metal. Faintly, through the thick insulation, she could hear Lily. The child wasn't crying anymore. She was wheezing. The horrible, high-pitched gasp of an asthma attack. Lily didn't have her inhaler. It was upstairs in her bedroom. Panic, cold and sharp, sliced through Beatrice's veins. She couldn't leave. If she left, Lily could die in that freezing dark room. But the only key to the cellar was on the master key ring, which Victoria kept in her pocket. The outside guards wouldn't help. They were strictly instructed never to enter the house unless called by Leo or Victoria. Beatrice looked at her bleeding, throbbing hand. She looked at her reflection in the polished, stainless steel refrigerator. She saw a fat, terrified maid with a bloody cheek, a woman who had spent her whole life making herself small, letting people walk all over her. Not tonight. Beatrice ran. She bypassed the back door and sprinted up the main staircase. Her lungs burned, her chest heaving, her heavy footsteps thudding against the floorboards. She headed straight for the one room in the house that was absolutely forbidden to everyone. Leo Rossi's private office. The door was locked. Beatrice didn't care. She backed up and threw her 260-pound frame against the solid wood. The frame splintered, but held. She stepped back, let out a primal yell, and threw her heavy shoulder into the door again. With a loud crack, the lock gave way, and Beatrice tumbled into the dark, leather-scented office. She scrambled to the massive oak desk. She knew from cleaning the office that Leo kept an emergency, encrypted burner phone in the top right drawer. It was the only line that could bypass his security team and ring directly to him, no matter where he was. It was to be used only for syndicate emergencies. Death was the penalty for misusing it. Beatrice yanked the drawer open. The black phone sat there, menacing and silent. She grabbed it. Her fat, bruised fingers trembled so badly, she almost dropped it. She pressed the single red button on the keypad. It rang once. Twice. "Speak," a voice rumbled on the other end. The sound of Leo Rossi's voice, cold, deadly, and impatient, made Beatrice's blood freeze. In the background, she could hear the chaotic sounds of a Miami street and men shouting. "Mr. Rossi," Beatrice gasped, tears streaming down her face, mixing with her blood. "It's Beatrice! The maid!" There was a dead silence on the line. The sheer audacity of a maid calling this number was enough to get her killed. "Beatrice!" Leo's voice dropped an octave, the tone shifting from business to absolute, lethal danger. "Why do you have this phone? You have to come back," Beatrice sobbed, throwing all caution to the wind. "She locked Lily in the cellar. Lily is having an asthma attack. Victoria won't let me get the key. She fired me. She hurt me. But I don't care, Mr. Rossi. You have to save Lily." "What did you say?" The sound of the Miami street in the background vanished, replaced by the terrifying sound of a man who had just realized his most precious treasure was in the hands of a monster. please come home now," Beatrice pleaded, her voice cracking as she pressed the phone to her ear, sliding down the side of the desk to sit on the floor. "She'll destroy her, Mr. Rossi. She'll destroy her." "Beatrice." Leo's voice was suddenly eerily calm, the kind of calm that precedes a massacre. "Are you with my daughter right now? I'm locked out. The iron door, I couldn't stop her. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. She's suffocating down there." "Get away from the office," Leo commanded, his voice vibrating through the speaker. "Go back to the kitchen. Wait by the cellar door." "But you're in Miami." "Beatrice." The interruption cracked like a whip. "Do as I say." The line went dead. Beatrice dropped the phone. She didn't understand. Miami was a 3-hour flight. Lily didn't have 3 hours. She didn't have 30 minutes. Wiping her bloody face, Beatrice pushed herself off the floor. She ran back downstairs, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm. As she passed the living room, she saw Victoria sitting on the white sofa, laughing into her cell phone, oblivious to the fact that Beatrice had just triggered a nuclear bomb. Beatrice reached the kitchen and threw herself against the cellar door. "Lily, hold on, baby, I'm here. I'm right here." Silence. There was no more wheezing. There was nothing. "No, no, no," Beatrice wailed, tapping her heavy hands against the unyielding iron. "God, please, no." She turned around, determined to go into the living room and strangle Victoria herself, to rip the key from her manicured hands, even if it meant dying for it. But as Beatrice turned, the entire front of the house shook. A deafening crash echoed from the foyer, followed by the sound of heavy boots hitting the marble floor. Beatrice froze. Victoria's laugh from the living room abruptly cut off. "What is the meaning of—" Victoria's haughty voice rang out, followed instantly by a scream of pure, unadulterated terror. Beatrice rushed to the kitchen doorway, peering out into the grand hallway. The heavy mahogany front doors had been kicked open, splintering off their hinges. Standing in the entryway, flanked by 4 heavily armed men, was Leo Rossi. He wasn't in Miami. The meeting had ended early. He had been 20 minutes away. Leo's eyes locked onto Victoria, who was backing away in horror, dropping her wine glass. It shattered on the floor, red wine pooling like blood. Leo didn't say a word. He didn't have to. The look on his face was a promise of unimaginable violence. He unbuttoned his suit jacket, tossing it to the floor, and began to walk toward his fiancée. Beatrice stood there, her bloody face pale, her heart hammering against her ribs, realizing that hell had just arrived, and it was wearing a tailored Italian suit. The silence in the grand hallway was absolute, heavy, and suffocating. Leo Rossi did not run. He stalked. Every step he took toward Victoria resonated with a dark, lethal authority that made the very walls of the mansion feel as though they were shrinking. Matteo, his right-hand enforcer, a man with a scarred jaw and dead, calculating eyes, flanked him, his hand casually resting on the grip of the pistol holstered at his hip. Victoria pressed her back against the nearest wall, the remnants of her shattered wine glass crunching beneath her expensive designer heels. The flushed, alcohol-fueled arrogance that had painted her face just moments before completely vanished, replaced by an ashen, trembling terror. "Leo," Victoria stammered, her voice a fragile, high-pitched squeak. "Darling, I thought you were in Miami. We weren't expecting—" Leo didn't even look at her face. His gaze swept the room, instantly cataloguing the chaos. He saw the overturned chairs in the dining room, the shredded pages of Lily's sketchbook scattered like confetti. And finally, he looked at Beatrice. Beatrice was leaning heavily against the kitchen archway, Her black uniform was torn at the shoulder, soaked in sweat and dust. Her cheek was laid open, a jagged swelling cut leaking fresh blood down her jaw and staining her white collar. Her fingers were bruised a mottled purple where the iron door had crushed them. Despite her massive size, she looked utterly broken, until her eyes met his. In Beatrice's eyes, Leo saw the reflection of a fierce, desperate protector. "Where?" Leo's voice was a low, gravelly rasp that barely broke a whisper, yet it commanded the entire room. "The wine cellar," Beatrice gasped, pointing a shaking, swollen finger toward the heavy iron door in the kitchen. "She doesn't have her inhaler. She's not making any noise anymore, Mr. Rossi. Please." Leo's jaw clenched so hard the muscles ticked visibly beneath his stubble. He turned his attention back to Victoria. He didn't yell. He didn't raise his hand. He simply extended his open palm toward her. "The key," Leo demanded. Victoria shook her head frantically, tears of absolute panic welling in her eyes. "Leo, you don't understand. She was being a brat. She was disrespecting me, and this fat, insolent maid attacked me. I was only trying to discipline. The key." The words dropped like anvils. When Victoria hesitated for a fraction of a second, Matteo moved. He didn't ask. He grabbed Victoria by the collar of her pristine white blazer, slamming her hard against the silk wallpapered wall. With brutal efficiency, he reached into the pocket of her slacks and yanked out the heavy brass ring of master keys. He tossed them through the air to Leo. Leo caught them effortlessly and turned on his heel, moving toward the kitchen with terrifying speed. Beatrice pushed herself off the archway, her heavy legs burning as she hobbled after him. "Her inhaler is upstairs, in her bedside table," Beatrice yelled to Matteo. Matteo didn't need to be told twice. He sprinted up the grand staircase, taking 2 steps at a time. Leo shoved the brass key into the cellar deadbolt. He twisted it, grabbed the heavy iron handle, and ripped the door open with such violent force that it slammed against the brick wall, chipping the masonry. He plunged into the freezing, pitch-black darkness of the stairwell. Beatrice was right behind him, flicking the light switch on the wall. At the bottom of the stairs, curled into a tiny, motionless ball on the freezing stone floor, was Lily. Her lips had a terrifying bluish tint, and her small chest was entirely still. "Lily!" Leo roared, a sound of raw, unfiltered agony tearing from his throat. He dropped to his knees, his expensive suit pants soaking up the damp chill of the cellar floor. He gathered his daughter into his massive arms, his hands shaking as he cradled her small head. "Breathe, Principessa. Breathe for Papa." Beatrice descended the stairs as fast as her large body would allow, dropping heavily to her knees beside them. The hard stone sent a shockwave of pain up her legs, but she ignored it. She placed 2 thick, warm fingers against Lily's neck. "She has a pulse. It's just weak," Beatrice said, her voice dropping into a deep, commanding register she didn't know she possessed. The motherly instinct entirely overrode her fear of the Mafia boss beside her. "Lay her flat, Mr. Rossi. Tip her head back. We need to open her airway." Leo looked at Beatrice, his dark eyes wide with a frantic vulnerability no one in his syndicate had ever seen. For a split second, he wasn't the ruthless don of the Chicago underworld. He was a terrified father. He did exactly as Beatrice instructed, laying Lily on the stone. "Come on, sweet girl," Beatrice coaxed, taking Lily's small, freezing hands and rubbing them vigorously between her large, warm palms to generate heat. Footsteps thundered down the stairs. Matteo slid to a halt, holding the plastic emergency inhaler. Beatrice snatched it from him. "Hold her jaw open," she ordered Leo. Leo pried his daughter's mouth open gently. Beatrice pressed the inhaler past Lily's lips and pumped it twice, leaning her heavy frame over the child and lightly pressing on her chest to force the medication deep into her lungs. For 3 agonizing seconds, nothing happened. The silence in the cellar was a suffocating blanket. Then Lily's tiny chest hitched. A horrible, raspy wheeze tore through her throat, followed by a violent coughing fit. Her eyes flew open, wide and terrified, staring unseeingly at the ceiling. "Daddy!" she shrieked, a raw, painful sound. "I'm here, baby. Papa is here," Leo murmured, scooping her up and crushing her against his chest. He buried his face in her dark hair, his broad shoulders shaking slightly. Lily turned her head, her watery, terrified eyes finding Beatrice. She reached a small, trembling hand out. "Bea." Beatrice leaned forward, pressing a soft kiss to Lily's forehead, her own tears mixing with the blood on her cheek. "I'm right here, my sweet girl. You're safe. You're safe now." Leo stood, lifting Lily effortlessly. He looked down at Beatrice, who was struggling to get her large frame off the floor, her knees popping and protesting. Leo extended a hand to her. Beatrice blinked in surprise. No one in this house had ever offered her a hand. Tentatively, she placed her bruised, bloody fingers into his large palm. He pulled her up with a terrifying, easy strength, steadying her on her feet. "Matteo," Leo said, his voice returning to its usual cold, deadly resonance as they ascended the stairs. "Yes, boss," Matteo answered from the top of the landing. "Take Victoria to the shipping warehouse on the south side," Leo ordered, not even looking back at the woman, screaming hysterically in the hallway. "Tie her to a chair in the freezing unit. Let her see what the cold feels like. I will deal with her personally when my daughter is asleep." "No, Leo, please, I'm sorry. You can't do this to me. I'm a Kensington." Victoria's shrieks echoed through the mansion, followed by the sound of a scuffle, a sharp slap, and then the heavy thud of the front doors closing. The silence that followed was entirely different. It was the silence of a kingdom that had just been violently purged of its poison. 2 hours later, the estate was completely transformed. A private syndicate doctor had arrived, examined Lily, administered a proper breathing treatment, and given her a mild sedative to help her sleep through the trauma. Leo had sat by her bed the entire time, his hand enveloping hers, his face an unreadable mask of stone. Beatrice had retreated to her small quarters off the kitchen. She washed the dried blood from her face, changed out of her torn uniform into a simple, oversized grey sweatshirt and loose sweatpants. She taped her bruised fingers and applied a thick butterfly bandage to the deep gash on her cheek. She sat on the edge of her narrow bed, staring at the wall. The adrenaline was leaving her body, replaced by a deep, aching exhaustion and a creeping dread. She had broken into the boss's private office. She had shattered a solid oak door. She had used the emergency syndicate phone. Under normal circumstances, those offenses were punishable by a bullet to the back of the head. Furthermore, she was a massive, clumsy maid who had failed to prevent the boss's fiancé from nearly killing his child. She was certain she was about to be fired, or worse, quietly disappeared. A soft knock on her door made her jump. "Beatrice," one of the guards said through the wood. "Mr. Rossi requests your presence in his study." Beatrice closed her eyes, took a deep, shuddering breath, and stood up. This is it, she thought. At least Lily is safe. She walked down the quiet corridors, her soft slippers making no sound. When she reached the study, she stopped dead in her tracks. The heavy oak door was entirely shattered off its hinges. Splinters of expensive wood littered the Persian rug. Beatrice flushed a deep, humiliating red, realizing the sheer physical force it must have taken for her heavy body to cause that much destruction. She stepped carefully over the debris and entered the room. Leo Rossi was sitting behind his mahogany desk. The single desk lamp cast long, sharp shadows across his face. He had discarded his suit jacket and tie. His white dress shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, the sleeves rolled up over his thick, heavily tattooed forearms. 2 crystal glasses sat on the desk, alongside a very expensive, very old bottle of bourbon. "Sit," Leo commanded softly, gesturing to the leather armchair opposite him. Beatrice nervously gripped the hem of her oversized sweatshirt. "Mr. Rossi, I want to apologize for the door. I know I had no right to break into your sanctuary. I know I shouldn't have touched the red phone. If you want me to pack my things, I understand. I just ask that you find someone kind to look after Lily." Leo stared at her. He didn't blink. He poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into each glass, pushed one across the desk toward her, and picked up his own. "Sit down, Beatrice," he repeated, his tone leaving no room for argument. Beatrice carefully lowered her heavy frame into the expensive leather chair. She felt incredibly self-conscious, hyper-aware of how wide her hips were, how her stomach pressed against the fabric of her shirt, and the ugly bandage on her face. Leo took a slow sip of his bourbon. "Do you know what kind of wood that door was made of?" Beatrice swallowed hard. "Oak, sir. Solid 2-inch reinforced oak," Leo corrected, a faint, dark amusement flickering in his eyes. "My men use a battering ram to breach doors like that during raids. You went through it with your shoulder." Beatrice looked down at her lap, her cheeks burning hot. I threw my weight into it, Mr. Rossi. I guess it's the only time being this size came in handy." She meant it as a self-deprecating deflection, a habit she had developed to beat others to the punchline of her own existence. Leo slammed his glass down on the desk. The sharp crack of crystal against wood made Beatrice flinch. "Do not insult yourself in my presence," Leo said, his voice dangerously low. "The woman who broke through that door, who defied a syndicate bride, who held my dying daughter in the dark while bleeding, that woman is not a punchline. Do you understand me?" Beatrice looked up, stunned. Her breath hitched. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever demanded she respect herself. "Yes, sir." "Drink your bourbon," he ordered. Beatrice picked up the glass with her taped fingers and took a sip. It burned beautifully down her throat, settling the remaining tremors in her chest. Leo leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his dark hair. Victoria Kensington was not just a socialite, she was a strategic acquisition. Her father controls the shipping ports on the East Coast. Marrying her was a business transaction to secure a supply line. Beatrice frowned, confused as to why the head of the Mafia was explaining his business to the maid. "What I didn't know," Leo continued, his voice turning to ice, "was that Victoria had secretly struck a deal with the Moretti family. My direct rivals. Her goal wasn't just to marry me. Her goal was to slowly poison my daughter, break my lineage, and eventually push me out. Lily's asthma attack wasn't an accident today. It was a test run. Victoria wanted to see how long it would take for Lily to suffocate." Beatrice gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "My God!" If you had not called that phone, Leo said, leaning forward, resting his elbows on the desk, his dark eyes locking onto hers with a searing intensity, I would have come home tomorrow to a dead child and a grieving fiancé who would have played the victim perfectly. Leo stood up. He walked around the desk, stopping right in front of Beatrice's chair. He was towering, imposing, and reeked of danger, but Beatrice realized with a strange flutter in her chest that she wasn't afraid of him. Leo reached out. Beatrice froze as his rough, calloused fingers gently brushed the edge of the butterfly bandage on her cheek. His touch was shockingly gentle for a man whose hands were stained with so much blood. "You bled for my blood," Leo murmured, his thumb brushing against her jawline, sending a shiver down her spine. "In my world, Beatrice, loyalty like that is rarer than gold. It binds us. I just love her, Mr. Rossi," Beatrice whispered, staring up into his dark, intense eyes. "She's a good girl." "I know you do," Leo said, stepping back, though his gaze never left hers. "Which is why, effective immediately, you are no longer a maid in this house." Beatrice's heart dropped into her stomach. "He's firing me anyway." "Mr. Rossi, please. You are going to be Lily's official guardian and head of the household staff," Leo interrupted, his tone final. "You will have a salary that matches a syndicate lieutenant. You will have a private suite on the second floor, next to Lily's, and you will never scrub another floor in this estate as long as you live." Beatrice sat in stunned silence. A tear slipped from her eye, tracing a clean path through the dirt still lingering on her neck. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Leo commanded softly. "Yes," Beatrice breathed. Leo nodded, a dangerous, cold smile finally touching his lips. "Good. Now go pack your things and move them upstairs. I have to go to the south side. I have a rat to freeze." As Leo walked out of the ruined office, checking the magazine of his pistol, Beatrice watched him go. The invisible, overweight maid was dead. In her place, something entirely new was beginning to breathe. The Southside shipping warehouse was a cavernous, echoing monument to the Rossi family's power. Inside the industrial freezing unit, the temperature was a bone-chilling -10 degrees. Slabs of prime beef hung from iron hooks, their breath frozen in the air. Right in the center, tied to a metal chair with thick zip ties, sat Victoria Kensington. Her pristine white blazer was stained with dirt, her platinum hair plastered to her face with frozen tears. She was shivering so violently that her teeth chattered in a loud, rhythmic clatter. The heavy steel door groaned open, spilling a rectangle of dim yellow warehouse light into the freezer. Leo Rossi stepped inside, his breath pluming in the freezing air. He wore a heavy wool overcoat, but he left it unbuttoned, unaffected by the cold. Matteo stood just outside the door, an assault rifle resting comfortably across his chest. "Leo," Victoria sobbed, her lips tinted a dangerous shade of blue. Please, I'll give you whatever you want. My father will give you the purports." Leo walked slowly around her chair, his heavy boots crunching on the frost-covered floor. He didn't carry a weapon. He didn't need to. The sheer, suffocating menace he radiated was lethal enough. "Your father," Leo began, his voice a low, echoing rumble in the metal room, "is already renegotiating his terms with my lieutenants. When I informed him that his daughter had brokered a back-channel deal with the Moretti family to stage a coup from inside my house, he was remarkably eager to cut ties with you to save his own empire." Victoria's eyes widened in absolute horror. The arrogant socialite illusion shattered completely. No, the Morettis, they forced me." "Do not lie to me, Victoria," Leo snapped, stopping directly in front of her. He leaned in, his dark eyes devoid of a single ounce of mercy. "You hated my daughter because she is the heir to the Rossi Syndicate. You thought if you could quietly eliminate her, you could manipulate me. You thought I was blinded by my grief." He reached out and tapped a single, frozen tear on her cheek. "You underestimated me," Leo whispered. "But more importantly, you underestimated Beatrice. You thought because a woman carries weight, because she wears an apron and bows her head, that she has no spine. That maid has more courage in her bruised, bleeding fingers than you have in your entire aristocratic bloodline." "What are you going to do to me?" Victoria choked out. "I am a businessman," Leo said, straightening his coat. "The Moretti family is planning to breach my eastern perimeter tonight, expecting you to have deactivated the security grid. You are going to call Carlo Moretti. You are going to tell him the grid is down, and when his men walk into my trap, they will be slaughtered." "And then?" she wept. "And then," Leo turned and walked toward the steel door, "you stay in the freezer." While the grim reality of cartel warfare painted the warehouse in blood, a different kind of revolution was happening back at the Rossi estate. Beatrice stood in the center of the sprawling second-floor suite. The room was larger than the entire apartment she had grown up in. A massive, king-sized bed with thick, plush-down comforters dominated the space. A marble fireplace crackled warmly in the corner, and the ensuite bathroom featured a soaking tub that looked deep enough to swim in. She had just finished showering, washing the dried blood and the suffocating smell of the wine cellar off her skin. She had found a set of luxurious, deep burgundy silk pajamas in the closet. They were a size 2X, a detail that made her heart skip a beat. Leo Rossi had not just given her a room. He had ordered his staff to stock it with clothes perfectly tailored to her large frame. For the first time in her life, Beatrice didn't feel the harsh, pinching restriction of a uniform. The silk glided over the thick curves of her hips and draped elegantly across her heavy breasts. She looked in the full-length mirror. She still saw her broad shoulders, her soft stomach, and the jagged butterfly bandage on her cheek. But there was something different in her eyes. The terrified, shrinking wallflower was gone. A soft knock came from the adjoining door. Beatrice opened it to find Lily standing there in her nightgown, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Bea, I had a bad dream," the little girl whispered, her huge brown eyes seeking comfort. "Come here, my sweet girl," Beatrice said, opening her arms. Lily ran to her, burying her face in Beatrice's soft, warm stomach. Beatrice scooped the child up, marveling at how light she felt, and carried her to the massive bed. They climbed under the heavy covers. Beatrice wrapped her large, protective arms around the fragile girl, pulling her tight against her chest. Within minutes, the steady, rhythmic rise and fall of Beatrice's breathing lulled Lily back into a deep, peaceful sleep. It was 4 a.m. when the bedroom door quietly clicked open. Beatrice opened her eyes. The fire had died down to glowing embers. Framed in the doorway was Leo. He looked exhausted. His white shirt was stained with soot and something that looked suspiciously like dried blood. He smelled of cold air, expensive tobacco, and gunpowder. He walked silently to the edge of the bed and stood there, looking down at the two of them. The harsh, ruthless mob boss who had left the house hours ago was completely gone. In his place was a weary man looking at the only light left in his dark world. "The Morettis?" Beatrice whispered into the quiet room, careful not to wake the child. "Handled," Leo replied, his voice a gravelly murmur. He sat on the edge of the mattress. The bed dipped under his massive weight. Victoria's betrayal has been neutralized. The estate is secure. He looked at Beatrice. His gaze slowly traced the elegant burgundy silk that draped over her curves. It was not the leering, clinical look of a man appraising an object. It was a look of profound, heavy reverence. I have spent my entire life surrounded by people who are starved, Leo said softly, his eyes meeting hers. Starved for power, starved for money, starved to fit into the perfect molds of high society. They are all sharp edges and poison. He reached out, his large, calloused hand gently tracing the curve of Beatrice's hip through the silk blanket. Beatrice's breath hitched, a sudden intense heat flooding her veins. You, Leo murmured, his thumb brushing against her side. You are soft. You are warm. You take up space, Beatrice, and you deserve every single inch of it. Do not ever shrink yourself in my house again. Beatrice felt a tear slip down her uninjured cheek. Mr. Rossi. Leo, he corrected, leaning down so his face was inches from hers. To the rest of the world, I am Don Rossi. To you, I am Leo. He pressed a lingering, gentle kiss to her forehead, right above her bandage, before standing up. Rest, Beatrice. Tomorrow, you take your rightful place. The transformation of the Rossi syndicate over the next 6 months was absolute. Victoria Kensington was quietly erased from Chicago's high society, officially moving to Europe for an indefinite wellness retreat, while her father's shipping empire was systematically absorbed by the Rossi family. The Moretti family, crippled by their failed ambush, was forced into a humiliating peace treaty. But the most shocking change was the woman standing at Leo Rossi's side. Beatrice Miller had stepped into the role of head of the household with a fierce, unwavering competence. The staff, who once ignored her, now answered to her with absolute respect. She ruled the estate not with the venomous cruelty Victoria had employed, but with a quiet, unshakable strength. She ensured the guards were fed, the business meetings were flawlessly orchestrated, and most importantly, that Lily thrived. Lily's asthma attacks vanished. The terrified, mute child was replaced by a vibrant, laughing little girl who shadowed Beatrice's every step, covered in flour from baking or mud from the gardens. And then there was Leo. The slow burn between the mob boss and the former maid ignited into an all-consuming fire. Leo courted her not with expensive, shallow gifts, but with acts of profound devotion. He bought her custom-tailored dresses from Milan, gorgeous, sweeping emerald greens and deep sapphires that accentuated her heavy curves, her thick thighs, and her soft stomach. He worshipped her body with a fierce, unapologetic passion that entirely healed the years of shame she had carried. The ultimate test of their new reign came on a freezing December night during the annual Syndicate Gala, a massive high-stakes gathering of the country's most dangerous criminal families, hosted at the Rossi estate. Whispers had circulated for months about Leo's new woman. The other dons and their dangerously thin, heavily plasticized wives had come expecting to mock a bloated, uneducated servant. When the grand doors to the ballroom opened, the silence that fell over the 400 guests was deafening. Leo Rossi walked in, radiating his usual lethal authority, dressed in a custom black tuxedo. But all eyes were on the woman holding his arm. Beatrice looked like a goddess of war and wealth. She wore a stunning, off-the-shoulder velvet gown in midnight black that hugged her generous curves perfectly. A heavy diamond necklace, the Rossi family heirloom, rested against her soft, full cleavage. Her hair was swept up in an elegant twist, and the faint, thin white sore on her cheek only added to her commanding presence. She did not hide her size. She owned it. walking with her head held high, her posture impeccable. A rival boss, a sneering man from the New York faction, approached them with his skeletal wife. "Leo," the New York Don smirked, eyeing Beatrice up and down. "I heard you made some staffing changes. I didn't realize you were bringing the kitchen help to the head table." The room tensed. Men reached for their concealed weapons. Matteo, standing by the bar, clicked the safety off his pistol. Leo didn't even blink. He didn't have to defend her, because Beatrice simply smiled. It was a terrifyingly calm, polite smile that completely disarmed the room. "We did make changes, Don Falcone," Beatrice said, her voice smooth, loud, and echoing with absolute confidence. "We found that the previous management was lacking in both loyalty and survival instincts. I suggest you mind your own house before you find your own foundation crumbling under the weight of your arrogance. I'd hate for you to suffer an unexpected freeze to your assets." The reference to Victoria's icy demise was a clear, unmistakable threat. It was delivered with such flawless, aristocratic menace that the New York don't face drained of color. He swallowed hard, bowed his head slightly, and backed away. Leo looked down at Beatrice, a terrifyingly proud smirk playing on his lips. He pulled her flush against his side, his large hand resting possessively on the soft, thick curve of her waist. "Have I told you how breathtaking you are tonight, Mia Regina?" Leo murmured, kissing the side of her neck, right in front of the entire underworld. "You might have mentioned it," Beatrice smiled, her heart soaring as she looked across the room to see Lily waving at her from the balcony, safe under heavy guard. Beatrice Miller had started as a ghost, an invisible, overweight maid who was meant to scrub floors and absorb the world's cruelty. But she had thrown her heavy body against a locked door, picked up a forbidden phone, and demanded that the devil himself come home. In doing so, she hadn't just saved a little girl. She had conquered a king, dismantled a cartel, and claimed her throne. And as she raised a crystal glass of champagne to the room of dangerous men who now feared her, Beatrice knew she would never, ever shrink again. Did you love this intense, pulse-pounding Mafia romance story? If Beatrice's fierce loyalty and Leo's ruthless revenge kept you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button right now. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell so you never miss out on our thrilling real-life drama stories.